Welcome to this video on the topic of trigonometry. In this video, we're going to unpack the idea of angles of elevation. An angle of elevation is simply a convention we use for defining direction relative to the horizontal plane. Now, when dealing with questions that involve angles of elevation, we typically find there are three components. First one being an observer to give us some perspective. The observer is looking towards an observee or a subject, as seen by the sun over here. And finally, we have the angle in which the observer is looking upwards towards the observee. Now, this angle that we see over here, we call the angle of inclination or the angle of elevation. Now, as you may have already guessed, angles of elevation are typically presented to us in contextual form. So if we go down, we have an example here. We have, after walking 12 meters from a tree, you observe the top of the tree at an angle of inclination of 24 degrees. Given you are 1.6 meters tall, determine the height of the tree. So this is a typical angle of elevation problem, as seen by we have this word inclination over here, or in other words, looking upwards. Now, the way in which I recommend solving these sorts of problems here is through a four-step process. The first step in the process is we draw a diagram. The reason for drawing the diagram is it gives us a bit of, make sure that we understand the context of what's going on here and we can see visually what it is we're trying to solve. So in this case, I'm going to draw a tree, a person separated by a distance of 12 meters. Now I'll draw in my person. Okay. The tree and the person are separated by a distance of 12 meters. Just like that. And the person is looking upwards to the top of the tree. And their direction is relative to the horizontal. The question itself is asking for the height of the tree. We'll define this as h, and therefore this quantity over here represents the height. Now, one thing that you can see is that using this problem here, we're not accounting for the gap between the eye level and the ground, but the question itself tells us by context that we have, or the person or the observer has a height of 1.6 meters. So we can assume that we can throw in 1.6 like that. And without this diagram, we might have missed that key feature right there. Okay. Now, the second step for solving this problem is we want to draw a diagram that removes all of the sketches and we're only dealing with the triangle and the quantities we're trying to find. So to do that, I'm going to draw up another triangle. Alright, now we need to deal with the height of the tree. Now, the height of the tree is the height of the triangle, so this side length here, plus the 1.6 from the person. So the height of the tree, that's going to be h, and therefore we've got 1.6 here, and then we've got an x, which is this side length over here. So in our case, h is going to equal x plus 1.6 meters. So what we need to do is we need to find the value of x over here. So next step is we need to label the diagram and we need to solve for the unknown, in this case x. Now, solving for x, we're going to label our triangle. We're going to have this as theta, this is the opposite, and this is the adjacent. The opposite is x, the adjacent is 12 meters. So therefore we're using tangent. Rearranging for x, and this is our value for x. Notice I'm not going to evaluate it just yet. Now, what we're really trying to find is the value of h here. Now, the expression for the value of h is x plus 1.6 meters. So to find h, we go meters, and then evaluating this, we get our calculators. We get a value of 6.94 to 2 decimal places. So thus we find the height of the tree is 6.94 meters. Now, finishing the question off, if the question is posed to us in English, then the only appropriate way to finish it off is to write the answer back in English as well. So we can say, therefore the height of the tree is 6.94 meters. So in conclusion, what we set out to do in this video was to unpack the ideas behind angles of elevation. In doing so, we had a look at the typical characteristics that a problem involving angles of elevation had, and then we had a look at this contextual problem over here.